What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and our economy is not getting better. And have you seen the prices here at the grocery stores? Prices of rent, prices of pretty much everything. In fact, most Americans were just asked this. Well, I mean, at least in this poll here, most Americans in new poll remain pessimistic on economy and inflation, saying Americans as a whole viewed the economy in a negative light this month, according to a poll from Gallup released here. When asked about the current economic conditions, 83% of those surveyed viewed them as only fair or poor, while only 16% viewed the economy as excellent or good. You can see the chart here. Yeah. Furthermore, 72% of Americans believe conditions are getting worse, while only 23% say they are improving. Wow. In addition, Americans continue to view inflation as their top economic concern. Yikes. And we have the banking crisis here really still looming. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says U.S. bank rules may be too loose and need to be re-examined. And how do we prevent more run on the bank situations? Because what happens is when people start pulling their money out, and even when businesses aren't covered. So, the FDIC with $250,000 of insurance doesn't cover a lot of businesses. Okay, so the problem is when businesses aren't covered and businesses start pulling their money out, or businesses aren't covered, it presents a massive type of bank fail type of situation that can happen here. Remember, a recent study showed that almost 200 different massive banks in the United States could fail, like we've already seen a couple of these happen here with run on the bank type of situations, and also credit and interest risk situations like we already have. Here's what we've seen Senator Elizabeth Warren kind of step up to the plate here and become the forerunner for this situation. Here's what she has to say here to try to help prevent this from happening.
Joining us this morning here at Post 9, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts. It's great to have you. Welcome,
Good
Senator.
Morning. Good to be here.
So we've talked about this a couple of times since the crisis began. What is really the motivation and the point of what you're trying to introduce?
Look, what I want to do is get banking where it ought to be, and that is boring. Banking is supposed to be there for putting your money in, and you can count on it's going to be there. And that's true if you're a family. It's true if you're a small business trying to make payroll and pay the utilities. And the problem we've got right now is that CEOs have lobbied Congress to weaken regulations. Donald Trump ran on weakening bank regulations for the multi-billion-dollar banks. I'm not talking about community banks, the multi-billion-dollar banks. And when Donald Trump got elected, he put in weaker regulators. He went to Congress then and said, give more authority to weaken the regulations. And now here's where the CEOs, they lobbied to get it. And then what happens? Jerome Powell mows down dozens of banking regulations. Randy Quarles, you remember, was vice chair of the Fed, says, I'm going to completely change the culture of banking regulation. So those CEOs say, we heard you. They start to roll the dice. They load up on risk, boost their short-term profits. SVB's profits went up 40% in 3 years, pay themselves huge salaries, huge bonuses, and then exactly what we would anticipate, the banks explode and the taxpayers have to come in to backstop.
Senator Warren, if you are running a charity in Massachusetts and you've got $700,000 in one bank, do you have to reduce that to $250,000 because of what happened with Silicon Valley Bank?
So this is why we need to raise the FDIC insurance caps. Come on. We should not be asking a nonprofit. We should not be asking a small business or a medium-sized business. Go check out the financials of your bank before you deposit the money you're going to count on in order to be able to make payroll. So we need to raise it, but I want to make 2 points.
Okay.
If we are going to raise that FDIC insurance, we've got to make sure, first, that we've got steady regulation over those banks, more regulation over the banks. And second, those who take advantage of the bigger numbers are the ones who have to pay for it. You're a community bank, you're happy at 250, everybody is there, then you shouldn't be paying for the higher risks associated with a higher deposit level.
Okay, so there's a perception in this country that as long as you don't steal from a bank and you're CEO, that you're fine. But it's okay to turn our whole system upside down and get paid mightily and also sell stock.
Yeah.
Now, if you made executives give that money back, would their behavior not be a little bit more boring?
Exactly right. What we want to do is align the incentives. So I have a bipartisan bill for clawbacks. And the whole idea is to say to these CEOs going forward, hey, if you load this bank up on risk and the bank explodes, you're going to lose that fancy bonus. You're going to lose that big salary. You're going to lose those stock options, because you really want to say to bank CEOs, if you're the kind of guy or gal who wants to roll those dice and take the big risk, don't go into banking. Banking is not the place for you. Banking is about steady profits. Banks should absolutely be able to make profits. But when banks load up on risk, they put depositors at risk, they put small businesses at risk, and ultimately, as we have learned with these multi-billion-dollar banks, they put our whole economy at risk. So we got to make a change there. I've got a bipartisan bill to do it.
Well, who would disagree with that?
Your mouth to God's ears. Let's make it happen. Can we call a few of our friends in Congress right now and say, Jim Cramer said, who disagrees with
I just find that when you almost bring down the system and you had a really, and you were able to sell stock right ahead, it might be something which says, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be in banking. Maybe you should be at a tool and die company.
And look, bless those who want to take on risk. I'm all for it. You're just not in the banking system. But it's also important, you kind of look at everything that broke here. It's also that we permitted the regulators to take their eye off the ball. Banking is a regulated industry for a reason, because of its impact on the rest of the economy. We need the regulators right now, just as Joe Biden said yesterday. They need to start tightening those regulations down right now. Jerome Powell needs to do 180 degrees, and all those regulations that he mowed down, he needs to stand back up. And Congress needs to toughen the laws so that the regulators never get a chance to do this again.
Have you ever been in a position where you looked at banking and thought part of it was over-regulated? Because there's a school of thought that we, unlike a lot of countries, benefit from having so many banks, especially at the community level.
I think that getting it right for the community banks is powerfully important. Look, the community banks are the ones who are doing the on-the-ground lending to very small businesses, and that is a crucial part of our economy, and they know those businesses. You know, they are in the cattle business, or they are in the local restaurant business. They know the scene.
Well, that's what SVB would have said about tech and the Valley.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you're talking about going from being, I don't know, a $50 billion bank to a $200 billion bank, I kind of think you're bigger than that little community bank. But you remember, that is exactly the argument that the CEO of SVB made back in 2016, came to Washington, knocked on doors, and said, weaken the regulations because we're just like that little community bank down the street. And the answer is, no, you're not. You have the capacity to bring down our whole economy.
All right, Senator Warren, you and I see eye to eye on a lot of things, and you know that I like to bring things to the party. Sometimes you agree with them, which is terrific. One of the things that happened here was the speed with which the money was taken out by the rich cabal.
Yep.
Okay, and I met with had Jensen Huang on. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, and he said that one of the major problems is that bank regulators get this information day after. They should be flagged immediately when the money's coming out, and he offers technology that would do that. Literally, you could do it with this new AI. Why not go a step forward and say, you know what, all banks have to have instant, real-time data on withdrawals so we can prevent this from bringing down the banking system?
So I think that's a very interesting idea, and you will never find me arguing against faster information, better information, more accurate information. But I do want to say the time to fix this problem was not the morning that the run started. The time to fix this problem is measured in years before we got there.
No disagreement.
And the fact that these dang regulators knew there were problems and said, hey, here are problems and you should fix them. And then when the problems didn't get fixed, continued to cover their ears and their eyes. No, that falls on the regulators. Shame on them.
Really?
So you heard them, these big banks taking on this risk and failing has almost brought down our entire economy more than once, especially back in 2008, 2009. That financial collapse and the economic meltdown and the recession that ensued afterwards, that was a pretty big. And the government had to step in and bail out the banking sector to the tune of trillions of dollars. And it was very messy, especially behind the scenes and what happened there. And looks like we haven't learned our lessons, and especially with the banking regulations that have been lightened. Yeah, it's banks are taking on more and more risk to make more profits. And when the time comes around that they take on too much risk and it implodes and banks start to fail, oh well, guess whose money is at risk? Yours, small businesses, big businesses, your jobs sometimes. And then what happens is these big banks that have hundreds of billions of dollars start to fail. In some cases, these banks are trillions of dollars. We had some banks that are trillions of dollars, global banks in trouble, actually. And this financial crisis is actually just getting started. A lot of people are saying that this is the beginning of it, and this could lead to a big recession type of situation. The 2008, 2009, 2010 financial crisis, this could be the start of a new one here, and we'll have to see what happens. So, yeah, so do banks need to go back to the regulation that they had before the Trump era kind of deregulated them a little bit? Do they need a little bit more oversight or a lot more oversight? Do they need to up the FDIC insurance? Even if it's not really for most Americans, it helps prevent the run on the bank situations for mass amounts of withdrawals and for businesses and large businesses withdrawing their money. And it does help oversight and all sorts of regulations. How do we prevent banks from basically gambling with your money? So I'll keep you up to date here. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe down below and click the bell icon after you subscribe because it's completely free to do so. You don't have to worry about losing your money here. And this way you won't miss out on new videos that come out here on our YouTube channel every day. Here's some videos you should watch next. You can click on this video here to see what Putin just did and how the U.S. retaliated. And here's what Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just said about our economy, which was pretty crazy. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.